Welcome to another installment on the fun and profit of collecting baseball cards. We're kind of continuing this series on card companies, and we're speaking today about Upper Deck, the collector's choice, revolutionizing the trading card experience. 1987, the Upper Deck company was started by Paul Sumner and Bill Hemrick. CEO in 2005 was Richard McWilliam, who, because of the success of Upper Deck, was considered the most influential person of the past 20 years in the baseball card industry. Reggie Jackson serves as an advisor for Upper Deck and was featured in several cards of the series, as well as the Heroes of the Game, as well as Comic Book 2 and other cards throughout the years. The industry grew from $50 million in 1980 when Topps monopoly was broken by Fleer to a $1.5 billion industry in 1992. The Upper Deck collectors found that when that inaugural set came out, the cards were comparably very expensive, $1 a pack, which was the first time that a single pack of cards had reached that amount. But it was highly, highly sought after because the quality of cards we'll talk about briefly. And you had the hobby box as well as the updates of the cards, which were included in the regular series that was 800 cards altogether. And then in the update, it was 701 to 800. So a pretty impressive set, more expensive, but many collectors felt it was more than worth it, as we'll see as we continue this. So revolutionizing the trading card experience, Upper Deck was able to introduce, really for the first time, very high quality premium baseball cards. And they had, along with this, very innovative high quality craftsmanship, from the glossy fronts to the thicker cardstock to stellar color photography, as well as pictures were included on the back and very kind of simple and clear statistics. Also, they included cutting edge technology, such as the anti-counterfeit hologram, as you see as a silver home plate up at the upper part of the card. Upper Deck also had a authentication of autographs that they kind of was a novel addition to the card industry. And all of these improvements push other companies, other competing card companies, of which at this particular time there were at least 6, to upgrade their product, as we'll see when we look at those card companies in further depth. So the improvements in the Upper Deck cards, where they included hockey come 1990, 1991, they included basketball and football. There was a great global distribution just around the world. They had 1990, they had autograph inserts, 1996, game day jerseys, 1998, piece of history bat cards. You can see on the right column many other significant additions to the card industry, and even in 2008, haircut signature cards that had actual strands of hair. A character in this kind of Upper Deck history was an individual named Dwayne Busey, and he was actually a professional baseball player who pitched for the LA Angels and became a co-founder of the Upper Deck company. Turned out that the players union was not accepting another card company for at least 3 more years. And because of Busey's connection with professional baseball, he was able to negotiate this. And as a result, he negotiated for himself for an income of $17 million. Now, in 1994, due to the baseball strike, Upper Deck's business stalled and 2 years' profits were down, but those 2 years of profits were entitled to Busey, which in some shape or form somewhat hurt the company. Upper Deck concluded then its deal with Busey and figured that it was the worst that they had ever done to basically include him in the company. Now, what made the Upper Deck so special, and there were several things, as we already mentioned, in terms of its high quality cards and new technologies, but the big thrust was getting as its #1 card in the collection to be Ken Griffey. Ken Griffey was the number one draft pick in 1987. And even though other card companies also in 1989 produced Ken Griffey cards, the real bonus rookie was from the Upper Deck set because it was such a high quality. It was thought at the time perhaps to be not in as much quantity. It was in demand. It was hard to get a hold of it. So even in the few days when it was introduced, the card soared up compared to the price of other cards or new cards. And the same could be said for many of the cards in Upper Deck, and one of them was the Randy Johnson card. And you can see as it compares to the lower quality tops at the time, as well as Donruss, Fleer, Score, and Bowman. So Ken Griffey Jr. became the phenomenon, the most iconic card really of all time in terms of its collectability, and that it was the number one card in the Upper Deck series. In fact, the Upper Deck sold out midway through the inaugural year 1989, and actually because of the success of the 1989, it pre-sold the 1990 series. Score and Topps neglected to include Ken Griffey in the regular 1989 sets, and basically this is another fortuitous thing that was for the Upper Deck company. Now, this guy, Tom Guidman, was just a teenager, 18, and he was kind of responsible for the players that were picked for that inaugural set in 1989. And this rookie card soared from $10 in 1989 to it was selling for $100 in 1999. But the fact was, it was not scarce, nor was ever scarce. And that even people who pulled the card from a factory set without touching it and immediately putting in a protective covering, when they sent it out to get it graded, and it should have been, you would thought, be graded a 10 mint, but it was many times graded as low as a 7. And today, those cards, though it's projected that the rookie card should be worth a lot, that people are lucky to get it sold for $10 to $40 due to this baseball glut that took place in the 80s and 90s. It was the card of the year, though, back from 1989 to 2004. So it was bought up rapidly, and it's almost everyone wanted in the collection that people get their hands on. Several of them, thinking they could prosper later on, bought numerous of these Ken Griffey cards. It was the most graded card in Upper Deck history and of all time. But the manufacturing of the card, because it was the first card, it was situated in the top left corner of uncut sheets. And this made it liable to poor cuts and ding corners, which the Upper Deck did replace these damaged cards. But again, even in terms of the coloration, the print, the clearness of the photo, that some cards are more mint than others, and that's just the way it is. So it's not even how you handle the cards, it's how good the card comes from the manufacturer that determines its grade and certainly its value. So not only was it fortuitous that they got Ken Griffey to be their lead card in the 1989 set, but there was a whole host of rookies that became very successful players, if not Hall of Famers. And as we already mentioned, there was Randy Johnson, Tom Smoltz, Craig Biggio, Omar Vizquel. You had Sandy Alomar, who had been the player of the year in AAA, and you had Gary Sheffield, who was a the prominent player in AA, and then you had Greg Jeffries, who was a minor league player of the year 2 years in a row. Other players that certainly were known and quality players were Felix Jose and Dante Bichette, Mark Lemke, Brady Anderson, Chris Sabo, Joe Girardi, known mostly for his being the skipper of the New York Yankees, Jose Bautista, Doug DeCenzo, Lenny Harris, Joe Clark, and a very kind of courageous pitcher, Jim Abbott, who had missing an arm below the elbow, but still was able to be a fantastic pitcher. Then the 1990 Upper Deck followed in terms of that interest in these rookie cards. So there were so many rookie cards, and they went up in value so fast that people were anxious to get their hands on any prospects that were promoted to be kind of the next greatest player. And so that 1990 even had its own checklist for the rookies. And those rookie cards included Deion Sanders, who was a dual sports person, Sammy Sosa, who was this home run hitter that kind of competed with Mark McGwire. You had Larry Walker, who was a fantastic hitter for average. It kind of hurt him. He was in Colorado, but nonetheless became a Hall of Famer. And you had Juan Gonzalez, who again was a phenomenal home run hitter, John Olerud, Ben McDonald, Todd Zeal, Jose Offerman, and so forth and so on. And then you have Andy Benes, who was in 1989 the first draft pick and was supposed to be the lead card in Upper Deck, and instead they used Griffey, which turned out fortuitous for them. There were also, because of the great rookie grade, if any player came into the league and had a really good start, they just rushed to get that particular rookie card. And one of them that just went up phenomenally towards the end of the year in 1990 was Kevin Moss, as well as Hal Morris. Other players that were kind of known were part of this rookie list. But again, not a lot of them really ever made that Hall of Fame potential. In 1989, 1990, not only did you have these host of rookie cards, but you also had players that were stars, and people, because it was such a high quality card, also wanted to include these in their collection. So many of these cards were very popular, and the price was parallel to what the cost of the card was, as well as the popularity of the player. 1991, Upper Deck rookies, it continues. Of course, now they're competing with other card companies who are also having upper echelon type of cards and high quality to compete with Upper Deck. You also have sets that are coming out at the end of the year that are update sets or rookie card sets that are competing. So it's not that these rookies are the first ones to come out or necessarily in competition the best cards. Case in point, you've got the Frank Thomas card, which is a very popular player and made the Hall of Fame, but his card had already been out in Topps, and the kind of quality card that was considered the best was at that time the Leaf card. You also have Chipper Jones, and you have Jeff Bagwell, Pedro Martinez, Jim Thome, and a host of others that made the set, extremely sellable. And then you have another card like person who just came into the league with a fury, and that was Dave Justice, and it was certainly, these cards were marked up rapidly for speculation at that particular time, and several other players. But one card that speculators kind of jumped all over was the Todd Van Poppel, who really didn't last long at all in the league because of injuries. And then you had Luis Gonzalez, who was well known and had some fame. So a good list of cards, but again, because there's so many, the value is still kind of wavers today in terms of sales. Now, 1992 continues, and there are a host of cards, and these are quality cards. So you have the Ivan Rodriguez, and you also have the Ryan Klesko cards, and this series and others. So, but the sales of Upper Deck are kind of waning at this particular time because there's so many competitors. 1993, thanks to Derek Jeter, again, you have a rookie card, and the potential for Manny Ramirez comes out, as well as Johnny Dawkins, so that the rookies were available and a little higher price than most cards. But one of the things about Upper Deck was its action series. So it had some amazing movement of cards of pitchers and people catching balls and running and batting and so forth. And this kind of added a lot of interest in the set, and certainly during the 89 and 90 series. You had the base stealing of Ricky Henderson. You had the dual sport of Deion Sanders, and certainly the batting prowess of Ken Griffey showing up in the motion cards, as well as a kind of an odd card of Nolan Ryan, who certainly was a pitcher throwing a football. And then we have Upper Deck baseball card subsets. And this Heroes series that appeared in many of the years of Upper Deck, starting with Reggie Jackson and Nolan Ryan, and eventually included many more players. And it was a subset of maybe 10 to 12 cards, but kind of a neat thing to collect within the collection. And then you had hologram cards, these kind of shiny cards like the Hank Aaron card. You also had kind of a subset of the sluggers or the subset of the home run heroes. You also had the legends or all-time heroes, Mickey Mantle cards, and Derek Jeter was a popular kind of insert cards that were available in those 90s. As all sets, as we've talked about, there are certainly going to be errors and variations. I'm just going to mention a few that might be of interest. You have the Ken Griffey card, which you'll see that little red box. In one of them, it has the copyright, and the other box is blank. So that was a variation that people picked up. You also have the Mike Witt card, and he basically had a uniform malfunction. I'll let you use your imagination. And once they put the card out, they basically had to black it out, and then they replaced that card with another card, which was kind of a nice card of the rookie threats of the Montreal Expos, which was the Larry Walker and the Grissom and the DeShields card. And then if you look at the Nolan Ryan card, you will see that one has the 300 win and the other one's missing it. So that's kind of a variation that was of interest for people to collect, as well as the Ben McDonald card. You'll see that the logo Baltimore in one, and you'll see the logo of the rookies in another. And finally, in the Dale Murphy card, you'll see it's reversed. Like, this is so familiar in terms of the areas where one, it looks like the batter's left-handed and the other looks like they're right-handed. And so those are some of the variations, and kind of makes the car a little bit more valuable depending on if there is a market for it. So in 2005, the liquidation of Fleer Skybox was acquired by Upper Deck. 2007, they actually made an offer to buy competitor Topps. It never went through, but it's an interesting kind of ditty in history that they were actually making an offer to this large agglomerate called Topps. In 2008, they retired their green diamond logo and replaced it with a new design. And the reason they did is that it made better use of the market of all its products. It wasn't just kind of, when you see the thing, you think baseball cards, but you think of other collectible cards like football and hockey and basketball. And then in 2009, kind of like a VIP club of people who are collectors, they introduced for them the Diamond Club for elite collectors. So in 2010, Upper Deck no longer was licensed to produce NFL trading cards. And 2015, Panini American acquired the collegiate licensing company exclusive trading card agreement that Upper Deck formerly owned. So now we have this kind of company coming in that we've talked about with Fleer, we talked about with Score, we talked about with Donruss. It's kind of taking over and kind of sharing the market share with Topps, because they kind of own a lot of the logos and company names and company cards and so forth that's going on. So in 2009, the Upper Deck company, their revenue slowed down, and there was many reasons for this. It was all the card companies, but Upper Deck was taking a big hit. So revenue slowed down due to the overproduction of cards, which you mentioned over and over again, and that overproduction and less value or less projection or less profit or less investment made the demand for trading cards decrease. People were, still collecting, but they weren't kind of thinking of it as investment. They were well aware that there were so many cards that if it wasn't collecting for fun, it really didn't have much value. Mick Williams, who we mentioned before, he was the CEO, and he sought other people other than himself as scapegoats for missing sales projections. In fact, he purged 5 other executives of the Upper Deck company in order to solidify his control. For the general population, collecting, swapping baseball cards was perceived as child's play, and this perhaps also helped lead to an exodus from the hobbyist. And then lawsuits, as we've talked about, and licensing and so forth and so on, crippled Upper Deck's hopes of ever returning to relevance. Global financial crisis that was happening dealt a heavy blow, and finally, the last finally licensed Upper Deck baseball cards were released in 2009. So 2009, Major League Baseball announced it entered into a multi-year deal with Topps, giving them exclusive rights to produce Major League Baseball trading cards. Major League Baseball filed a federal lawsuit against Upper Deck for trademark infringements, and a mutual settlement stating that Upper Deck could continue selling its 3 current baseball card series, the 209 Stars and the 210 Upper Deck series ones were those series, but Upper Deck kind of phased out then, and they were prohibited from using any Major League Baseball trademark. So the baseball cards pretty much came to an end at that particular time. So if you are interested in learning additional information about the baseball card manufacturers, as well as collecting cards for fun and profit, be sure to follow us below. Take a moment to hit the subscriber button, and feel free to view our library of YouTube videos. Also, check out our eBay store, where we have available for sale many of the cards shown on these videos. So I bid you a farewell and take the rest of the day off. Thank you.